This is the last one for No Jumper World.
Yeah.
All right, so No Jumper has started a new podcast called Here We Go Again, and it'll be dropping every Monday. And the hosts of this show are Flakko, 𝙼𝙾𝚃𝚃, and Dejon. I watched the whole first episode. Did y'all see it, or did y'all see pieces of it?
I saw pieces of it.
I put moments in here, so like.
I thought it was pretty average.
How do you feel overall about it?
I think they all enjoy each other, which is a good part of it.
That's that's a recipe for a good podcast. But what was like the sassiness levels?
All right, so I don't know. Apparently, I go too hard on niggas who are episode 1. You know what I'm saying? So I try not to go too hard on some episode 1 shit because it's literally the first episode.
They're still cubs.
So I'll preface everything with. This is the first episode. They still have, even though they've known each other for a while, obviously, because they've worked. None of these people are new employees. This is just the first time they've all done it. I think Dejon will do good as a host or a facilitator of the topics and shit like that.
Oh, so he's okay.
He's like the A in terms of like the moderator or whatever. And Suspect and Flakko are going to be the debaters, pretty much. Now
he's the Nadeska.
Yeah, so now in the beginning of the show, it's kind of weird. So one of the things in the beginning of this show, it almost sounded like they were trying to do our show and like talk about shit that's been happening on other podcasts. I was like, the fuck is this shit? You know what I'm saying?
It felt that way.
So that was the beginning of the show, and I was like,
it's a special ed version.
Yeah, I was like, nigga, is this like what is this? You know what I'm saying? Like, not them trying to do our show and it's not executing how it's supposed to be. You know what I'm saying? But then they like later they started jumping into like other topics, and that's just the thing too. It's like I'm thinking about No Jumper content in its whole. One of the issues they used to have, one of the issues that world in general, Figmunity, No Jumper, Shame on You, all of them together, is a lot of them copy and paste all the same exact topics. So it's all hip hop things. But the reason that it wasn't an issue before AD and T-Rel and all them left is because there was so much inner workplace things. It didn't matter if they graced on the same topics more than ever because we were buying in for the storyline of The Office. You know what I'm saying?
Not really
the love and hip hop.
The love and hip hop version of The Office. So that's what we were buying into. So it made it to where 3 to 4 different shows could live on one network. And really the only show that had fresh topics that didn't clash with everybody else was the Disconnected show with House Phone and Blasey, because they talked about fashion. And none of the other people focused in on that. So when I first saw that, I was like, in the beginning, I was like, are they really about to try to do like a podcast about podcasts? Because it's not gonna work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then they started moving into other topics. But there were some things, one of the topics that was brought up was Joe Budden calling the whole network trash. And it was pretty much our episode that we did. And there's a couple things that are just like egregiously delusional in this clip that was said by like Flakko, Suspect, and possibly
all of them.
Everybody
all
on
them
camera.
niggas.
Yeah.
all of them. But yeah, let's play a little bit of this.
All right, so Joe Budden made some comments about No Jumper being like bottom tier content.
No, he said the whole network should just be scrapped.
Yeah.
No, so and here's what happened. So our boys, who was actually here, called the Home Run Podcast. It's AJ,
This nigga better not gonna be better.
Lord Nobles, and I forgot the other like dude names, man. So pretty much,
I'm talking about what was said on the podcast.
Yeah, right. So
That's
look,
what he said.
so I think Joe like seen them here, and Joe invited them on his podcast, right? And they have a podcast where they critique another podcast. So Joe brought them on.
Nobles.
This is what you mean by
That's
the
a
whole
joke.
they trying to do it like how we do it?
Yeah, because the first couple subjects in this entire podcast was stuff that was happening in other podcasts.
But to be fair, they were mentioned in podcast
No.
drama.
I understand that. I'm just saying that's not just one topic. I'm saying like the first 3 topics were that. So I'm like, oh, is this about to be 2 hours of podcasting about stuff that's happening on other podcasts? That's what I thought, because there wasn't this is one of 3. You know what I'm saying?
Because they didn't have like a little intro to the series about, hey, we're gonna be talking about this type of shit.
None. It was just
Nah.
Here we go again. The name, I don't fuck with the name at all. Just like the Here We Go Again. That's just fucking weird. Like,
Here we go.
But that kind of perfectly describes the energy in the room. It's like,
Yeah,
bro,
I was
let's
about to
just
say.
throw some shit on the wall and see what
Okay.
sticks.
A little
bit.
I was about to say.
Here we go
fucking
again.
with it.
New show again. We trying it again. Here we go
Yeah.
again.
Here
we go again.
Because it's not even the again though, because it's like Gina's not there. You know what I'm saying? And Remo's there, so it's like.
But the nigga who's been there over and over is like, nigga, here we go again.
And I think
This is the energy of this room.
I can see a lot going good for this show, especially if they just talk about what the fuck they want to talk about. You know what I mean? I think Suspect, shout out his cup. He might have to put it down for,
Very dirty.
when he's fucking recording.
There was a lot of recreational activities going on during this podcast too, which
Is all right.
Suspect is like drinking lean the entire time. Dejon pulls a bottle of '𝙿𝙻𝙰𝚃 out from underneath the table. He's also smoking blunts. I'm like, what is the fuck is this? Like, and then Flakko was like, so like, what's up with our set? Like, niggas are smoking, drinking.
Oh,
there's a
he
40.
called it out?
It's like, what the fuck is going on?
Because,
Like,
I didn't get
Flacco's a
that. I didn't see
professional.
that part.
He does
bro,
take
that's
this
what I'm
shit
saying.
serious.
Yeah, so I'm like, this is like, and Dejon, Mr. Professional, it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like that, I thought that was weird from him too, because it's just like Dejon's whole thing is just like, it's
Sassy.
all like, it's not even that. It's that his whole, just Dejon being there is ridiculous. Is a whole hypocritical move. Because the first time he went there, it was y'all are working for the white man and I'm doing everything all black, but now it was you. You know what I'm saying?
That's
so
true.
that's
that
always
whole
gonna
stance of the Black Power shit.
yeah, that's always
Okay.
gonna loom over him. Like the fact that you went up there on some, I'm doing, I'm better than working for a white man and no jumper, and now you clock in 5 days a week. You know what I'm saying? So that's always gonna be a strange thing. But then it's like, and during also, he was stressed like being professional and shit. Cause like Gina bogarted one of his interviews and he's like, this isn't professional. I came here for a professional podcast and I can leave and stuff like that. So it was like, Mr. Professional,
Yeah,
over here
you-
smoking blunts and cracking fucking bottles of 𝙿𝙻𝚃. What's happening?
He's
Like,
fake
real
righteous.
hypocritical.
And that's the
yeah,
thing.
he's fake
He's
righteous.
fake
yeah.
righteous.
And it's all about how you do it, right? Because with Shannon, it just makes sense. Granted, he has that liquor,
Shannon
which
Sharp.
I want to buy.
Shannon Sharp.
Shannon
Yeah,
Sharp.
yeah, yeah,
I want to
yeah.
try that liquor brand.
But he's a regal
like two
nigga.
of them
Like,
bitches.
you got to
Yeah.
live at least 40 years of life to get to that status.
Yeah.
And
But-
to be
That
able
might
to
be too young, too. You might have to
Yeah.
be 50 plus to have that level of maturity like that.
And to be consistent off the potion, like
Yeah.
these niggas, they're not drinking the whole pod. Consistent hype, like consistent level of like entertaining.
They were
That's a
doing
hard
something-
thing
They
to
were
do.
doing something the whole pod. Like something
Yeah.
was happening the
Yeah.
whole pod for sure.
Yeah.
But just to correct Flakko, Joe Budden did not first see us or see me when I went to No Jumper. That is not the case. We were already in communication. The nigga had already been following. So
Why would he say that?
I don't know. I just think just because I don't know.
Shit, according to Joe Budden,
That's just-
Joe knew
he was
about
just
his
It's just one of those
Flacco,
things. It's
nigga.
just
Like, you know,
it sounds good. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? But
it's
that's
not even
the-
like it sounds good. It's just
it's one of those things.
he
yeah.
brought us up. He was vaguely remember the nigga's name. So
Right. But yeah, keep going though.
They did a Patreon and they asked Joe, give me, like your top 3 best podcasts and top 3 worst. And Joe Budden said No
That's a
Jumper
perfect
is the worst and he don't care about nobody else. But
What's our retort to that?
with the right, but here's the thing though, right? And here's why it's pure hate. Because Joe Budden has said that when the No Jumper show had canceled. So like there was no podcast and
to go
That
off
was
of-
my defense.
Yeah.
One, nigga, what podcast are you judging? Because there
it.
isn't any.
Yeah.
And 2, like that nigga Axe said, bro, you could put a Picasso in front of them niggas and they gonna find something bad to say about it. That's what they do up there.
Right.
That's not a praise podcast. That podcast is you can put a beautiful sculpture in front of my face and I'm gonna figure out some nonsense to say about that shit.
Okay.
Podcast, like that's what they do there, you know?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, yeah, I
don't know
didn't
if-
expect
I
them
don't
to
know
say
if he's
nothing
talking
good
about
about
us.
shit over
he's
here.
talking about Joe, and it's ironic because they do the same shit.
Yeah. I think he's talking about Joey. I don't think he's talking about us specifically, but he's just saying
If the
like,
shoe fits, like, we just
shoe
kind
fits,
of put it
yeah.
on.
I'm about
But
to say.
But we're fixing your Picasso essentially.
Yeah,
that's pretty much what's happening.
It's a different kind of thing that's happening.
So
here.
there's a couple things that just like just pure delusion in this.
the
We
biggest
don't do
one,
podcasts.
yeah, I was about to say the biggest one is that we don't do podcasts over
What
here.
the fuck?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
But that it explains so much of the product that we get
Yeah.
that they don't even understand what they're cooking. That's why it comes out like
Bro,
this.
that's crazy.
The shit,
Yeah, that's true. I
it
didn't
ends
even
up
think about it like
so
that.
stepped on because it's like, yeah, they're cooking
They
it
don't even
improperly.
realize they're doing podcasts.
That's a
I'm
good
like,
thought.
Well, it's almost like how we've had these conversations before. It depends on like what you're pulling from. Like if when you come in this game, if you're pulling from like, let's say Andrew Schultz, 𝙬𝔦𝔐𝔬𝔑, like the product you're gonna give is gonna be immensely different if you're pulling from like fucking Adam 22. Granted, even
taste.
Adam 22, he would probably say he does a podcast, and all these are podcasts.
Obviously.
But like,
For sure, yeah. Adam is definitely saying I do podcasts.
Yeah, for sure.
But Adam also pulled from the names you mentioned. You know what I'm saying? So, which
Yeah, he did.
That's why Adam can
was
actually do
his
that shit.
inspiration.
exactly, and that was
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
so, but these niggas ain't doing that.
But
they're
that
not pulling,
shows
they're not
you-
pulling from podcasters. They're just jumping in thinking that hey, it's No Jumper. Let's go.
Yeah, they're pulling from a different time of No Jumper.
Nigga.
Like they still think it's 2017 No Jumper.
Well,
or
I'm trying to
something.
figure out what do they think they do when they go in there. Like just
It's-
because did they think that the No Jumper show was the only podcast on the network?
You wanna know what it
don't
is?
don't put it all on them. It's just almighty. The
Yeah.
title of this video is called "No Jumper Crew Response to Joe Budden saying their podcast is bad."
Literally.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
acknowledge it's a podcast in the title.
Right. That's just so
And-
ridiculous.
And like who, like I don't know, especially with Suspect.
Yeah.
he is a worker. He probably
Yeah.
doesn't know. He's probably never thought about like, oh, we can go to Spotify and listen to us. Like that's probably not even a thought.
That's true.
So
That's
it's
a good
like he
point.
doesn't
Yeah,
care about
that's a
those
good
numbers,
point.
those analytics. Which, by the way, we're on Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts.
All
Go
that.
check us out.
Yeah.
It's dangerous to have YouTube up while you're
But-
driving this shit.
But yeah, bro, it's fucking weird because I was like, when they said that, I was like, so this conversation, and then everybody just immediately, yeah,
Kinda
yeah,
agreed
yeah, I
to it.
agree. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I text Flakko, I said, bro, y'all do podcasts. Like, what are you talking about? You
Yeah.
don't do podcasts.
That's all y'all have
Yeah.
over there.
I'm
What
I'm
you
like,
talking about?
what? Like, that's what you do when you
Yeah.
get in front of the microphone. You're not on the radio.
Hmm.
It's YouTube that gets transferred to the audio services too. Like,
Adam is the only one.
All that happened was they both remembered shit that we've said about them. Like,
Yeah.
they wasn't listening to him say this is not a podcast. They listened to the first thing he said where they was like, them niggas hate on everything.
Right, yeah.
Flakko
Yeah.
started thinking about his big ass pants.
Yeah, yeah.
Dejon started feeling sassy again. Like they had flashbacks.
yeah,
they wasn't
that's
even
true.
listening to that point.
Yeah, that was crazy. I was like, well, that was wild. But I did watch this full episode live actually while it was premiering.
Did it feel like a podcast?
For sure. It's not, it's a podcast.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
They had the same beats.
Is there a different show they just premiered? Because I went to their podcast on Apple, and 8 hours ago, something called No Statements, episode 1. Oh yeah, it's two different things. Because Here We Go Again, episode 1 is on there, so they definitely have a podcast. It's on the podcast app.
Well, they
Oh, yeah.
said this is the new podcast. So like in their mind, when No Jumper Show left, they stopped doing podcasts.
Yeah.
And that's another thing too. When I was talking to I think in this clip as well, and even when I was talking to Flakko, they don't think interviewing somebody is considered a podcast, which is fucking crazy. Like they both did. And I was like,
You can have a podcast and interview people on your podcast.
yeah, I'm like, what? I'm so confused. I'm like, do we not
You're
understand
trying
what the
to-
base
and
level?
You're trying to understand the Western Hemisphere's
Yeah.
philosophy, and it's a different place over there, nigga.
Jesus
Yeah.
Christ.
Like I wonder if he thinks
And
they're. Do you think he thinks they're more important than podcasting? Like, does he hold himself to the same echelon as like CNN? Does he think that they're news?
Yeah, of
Oh,
course.
this is a new show.
Yeah.
No
looks
statements.
looks like Brick Baby got his own show.
No statements.
Yep.
Episode 1.
Big
Yeah.
Baby got his own show.
Who's that wet woman beside him?
She does look lubricated.
She looks glistening, nigga.
I'm about to watch this too. Damn, they just got a bunch of new podcasts coming out.
Here we go again.
dropping them.
They're doing the
Yeah.
Monday through Thursday thing again, or Monday through Friday thing again.
This
I ain't
nigga-
gonna lie.
That nigga got nip on his jacket.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
There's a lot of faces in the thumbnail. I believe in this though
Oh
for
wait,
some
go
reason.
back.